Hello and welcome to another edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty alongside John.
Hello, everyone.
Just the two of us tonight. Just lonesome
It
two
is.
again.
It is.
Yeah. Uh,
Can I have someone welcome everyone to Door 14 Hockey? Is that okay?
that's
So
fine.
everyone, welcome along to.
Door
It
14
didn't work.
Door 14 hockey.
Oh, Lila. Cute.
It is Isla.
I love it. Amazing. It did work. So how did that come about? Was it just like you were like, oh, do you want to interview studies podcast? And then it's like, yes, I'm going to say it.
Not even. So it was my lovely wife was trying as hard as possible to get her to say it on a video for me, for no other reason than to just say it. But no, she took her to bed and sent me an audio file of Isla actually saying it. So there we go.
Oh, cute. I love it. That should just be our intro from now on. Just have it at the very start, just Door 14 Hockey.
Yep.
Very cute. John, how are you doing?
I'm good, actually. It's been a busy couple weeks. Lots been on. The rugby is also back on, so I am all in on the Six Nations as usual. It was very nice to spend weekend number one with friends over in Edinburgh. Not at the game, but I am attending this weekend's Scotland Ireland game at Murrayfield, thanks
Oh,
to some good friends who have some tickets available. So I will be partaking in some Six Nations action this weekend. How are you?
very exciting. Yeah, I'm all good. Also pretty busy. We're celebrating my wife's birthday as well this past weekend, so that was very nice. We were away for
That's
that.
right.
And it was a break from hockey here in Belfast. There was nothing on live, so that also was just was good. Just kind of have a bit of a break from having such an intense period of hockey when we got one week after the other. But no, back to the SSC this weekend. I have to see the Giants this coming. I think it's Saturday night is this week, I believe. Let's just see.
You could be right.
Yes,
While you
I
look
am.
that up, let's address the elephant in the room because we
Mm-hmm.
mentioned it on the socials. Let's just make sure everyone's aware. We have moved the podcast to a Wednesday night,
Yep.
and it's meant it's just you and me tonight. But it's also meant that we are running concurrent with some Elite League matches as well. So, as everyone knows, over the last, let's call it a year or so, whenever we coincide with a game, I do like to keep tabs of scores and make sure that the good listeners who join us live are fully aware of how those games are progressing. So tonight, in Elite League action, we have the Glasgow Clan taking on the Fife Flyers. A whole Scotland affair involving two teams that we are going to talk about in this podcast. The current scoreline, which and now both games I'm going to talk about, they both started just over half an hour ago, so we're probably getting close to the end of the first period. Glasgow are currently leading Fife 6-1. So, Marty, be glad we didn't start at 7:30 because that would have been a lot of goal horns.
Yeah.
Um, and in the other game, we have the first round semi final of the Challenge Cup between the Sheffield Steelers and the Cardiff Devils. This game taking place in Sheffield, and it's currently 2-0 to the Sheffield Steelers in the cup that means nothing unless the Belfast Giants win it.
That would have been 9 goal horns in total on the period so
It,
far
it,
in the first period. So
It would have been.
uh,
It would have been pretty
yeah,
brutal for you, especially considering it's just you and me here in the studio, and
clearly
no one else to break the tension. So yeah.
it's clearly my favorite feature that happens whenever there's games on. Yes,
Oh,
as you were
clearly.
saying, there's only the two of us tonight. Aaron is currently in Boston for work and sent us some photographs in the middle of the night for us after evening for him. He's at the Boston versus Wild game last night,
And he was a bit of a
which looked like
scud on Fleury. To be fair, we
yeah.
got a message. We got a message just before I went to bed, which said Fleury in nets, and he's playing really well. Ended up being a what 3-0, 4-0 shutout for Boston. So Fleury was in fact not playing that well. By NHL standards, the Bruins clearly on an upswing there, because Fleury has been hot recently.
Yep.
So yeah, apparently he does not perform well in front of Belfast Giants fans, or indeed Philadelphia Flyers fans.
And Aaron was obviously there last night in Boston, representing the Belfast Giants with his Belfast Giants jersey on, which was a good thing to
I
see.
did mean to throw the photo that he sent us up on the slides, but did not get a chance today, sadly. So, Aaron, no picture, nobody believes it. You weren't there. You're just at home in bed. You just can't be bothered being here.
And Dave has family commitments tonight, so we'll hopefully see him in the next podcast in 2 weeks' time. John, if it's okay with you, let's get stuck into our podcast as we always do and take a look at the current Elite League standings as they currently are on the 5th of February, one day earlier than we normally record. So let's take a quick look across the league. Sitting in first place is the Belfast Giants with 35 games played and 53 points. The Sheffield Steelers now sit in second with 34 games played, 46 points. The Nottingham Panthers are in third with 34 games played, 45 points. The Cardiff Devils currently sit in fourth with 33 games played, 44 points. The Coventry Blaze are in fifth, 36 games played, 41 points. The Guildford Flames are in sixth with 35 games played, 40 points. The Dundee Stars are in seventh with 36 games played, 31 points. And the Glasgow Clan are in eighth with 32 games played, 27 points. Manchester Storm currently still sit in ninth, 25 points, and the Fife Flyers continue to hold up the league in that 10th spot, 32 games played, 8 points in total. We will have a lot, and I mean a lot of chat coming up about the Fife Flyers, so let's focus on them when it comes to period one, because we do have a lot to talk about there. Let's turn our attention to the top of the league, John, and start off looking at the fact that like there's all changed since our last podcast. Since our last podcast, the Belfast Giants were sitting top, but the Cardiff Devils were in second, followed by, I think, Nottingham, followed by Sheffield in our last podcast. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong there. But the current standings have switched around completely this week, and we have the Belfast Giants sitting top, followed by the Sheffield Steelers. John, Cardiff. Let's start with Cardiff. Obviously, you've got your nice little graph there. I'm sure we can switch to that. But Cardiff dropping from that first place down into fourth. Yes, okay, they've got 2 games in hand over the Belfast Giants, 1 game in hand over the Sheffield and Nottingham, and they're kind of around about the same points. If they were win that game in hand, they would be on the same points as Sheffield Steelers. Currently losing to the Sheffield Steelers in the Challenge Cup, but Cardiff has really kind of not turned on their head since they came out of the Continental Cup play, but I mean, indications are that that's kind of where the turning point has been. The Continental Cup was riding high, and all of a sudden now Cardiff Devils have kind of slipped a bit. Would I be right in saying?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The reason I was clutching my head was I was planning to show this, which clearly didn't work. So I have worked the magic I was supposed to work 2 weeks ago and have created this in animated GIF form, which it turns out doesn't like being exported into slides on our podcasting platform. So you can see the trajectory that some of the teams have taken. So sad times that I can't bring that up. But anyway, let's continue chatting about the standings and things.
It's working for me. It was moving there.
Oops, that's because I've just clicked to another slide. There we go. It's working because we're now looking at it on my separate screen. It's not slides that we have uploaded, and it's technical issues. One and another lesson for me to learn going forward. I keep trying new things, so we'll carry on. Yeah, the all changed at the top. You're right. Cardiff Devils are on a little bit of a slide. You can see from the graph there. The last couple of weeks, they've been on a bit of a downturn. Has the pressure of the Conti Cup, has that had a big impact on how they've been able to sort of progress back into league form? I'm not entirely sure. I haven't really looked at what their run up to Christmas was. Were they up against some of the, for as being as kind as possible, were they playing a lot of games against the lower teams? Perhaps they were. I'm not entirely sure what's been going on there. Every team now seems to be getting hit with injuries, and I don't think Cardiff are any different in that. we're in the second half of the season. A lot can still happen. We're only just over the halfway mark as far as games are concerned. But yeah, you can see that lovely Cardiff Devils logo, and I was sure to use the proper new logo this time. Steady in first place from week one right the way through until just a couple of weeks ago. But that's been a significant slide as particularly Belfast and Sheffield have caught up on their games played. Now, there's been significant games in hand that have been lost by Cardiff. There's also been head-to-heads between those three teams, so Cardiff and Belfast and Sheffield in particular, where Cardiff have come off second best. They definitely appear to be the third best out of those teams. The team that is surprising, and I say surprising, I've been kind of pumping their tires the last couple of podcasts, is Nottingham. They are really starting to impress me. They look locked in this top third of the table now, and it's fantastic to see. I said it in the last podcast, an elite league needs a strong Nottingham Panthers team. We've lacked that for a few seasons now, but they seem to be back and back in a big way.
Yeah, I would agree, 100%. As you say, that Nottingham team has been looking like they've been on top form, and just even their standings as they currently are kind of shows exactly just that. And as you say, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep challenging right up to the end. I mean, they're continue that form, take on Sheffield, bypass them, hopefully not bypass Belfast. But yeah, I mean, fair play. I said at the start of the season, whenever we were looking at our predictions for this season, we talked about teams and who would take what and where I think people would end up. I think I had commented and suggested, I think one of my picks for at least playoffs, I think this year was Nottingham Panthers, which hurt me to say, but obviously if Belfast doesn't win it, but I still stand by that. I think Nottingham this year have performed remarkably well. And I think that's down to a significant coaching change this year. We always knew, Danny Stewart coming from Coventry, we knew what he could do. He could do in Coventry on the budget he had in Coventry. So to move into the Panthers and to move into Nottingham to have a larger budget and a bit more of a free reign, if you will, clearly shows that he knows the league and he knew what he needed to do, and B, with the backing of the ownership and the money that is there in Nottingham, he can put together something that's quite special and kind of continue that form. So yeah, we definitely want to watch Cardiff, as you mentioned. That kind of change and downward turn. We don't know, as you say, maybe it depends on who they're playing the first part of the season. But the more that they get beaten, the better. That's all I can say right now. But hey, that's the way it is. Looking at the middle part of the league there, the Coventry Blaze, Guildford, Dundee. Well, I suppose Coventry and Guildford are kind of closest ones to the top four. Dundee are quite about 10 points behind from Guildford, roughly. But one because I've already played a game above that too. Do we see that kind of mid card? Would you say Coventry, Guildford, Dundee, and Glasgow? Well, Manchester's post to a certain extent. Would we say that they were kind of where they're currently sitting? Maybe is kind of like roughly what we're going to see by the end of this season.
Yeah. Realistically, the placings from fourth to 10th have been pretty much set for a couple of weeks now. The teams all to be at a standstill, and that's why I threw this GIF graphic back up, because it displays it really well. The only switch that we've seen in the last couple of weeks has been a switch in the top two Scottish teams. Dundee and Glasgow have switched position in the last week and a half or so. And that's really the only shift that we've seen. Everything else is starting to settle a little bit, which is, it's not great for the league. I don't like to see this early in the season that we're pretty much set on our bottom teams. I don't like seeing playoffs being effectively decided at this point, at least our first round of playoffs. Let's be totally honest, Fife are out. Fife are done. They're still in single figures in points. They are going nowhere. They're going to play the rest of their league games, and then it's straight to the golf course for the guys. Manchester, I'm not entirely sure they have it in them to claw their way back out. It's going to take a collapse from either Glasgow or Dundee for them to be overtaken. I feel at this point, I feel like Dundee have been getting results. Just look at the game against Belfast. Mark Lefebvre's post-game comments this week showing how massively impressed he is with his team. Now, granted, that wasn't a Belfast Giants team firing on all cylinders, and we can have a go as much as we want at that Belfast Giants team, because they were that whole weekend was a shambles as far as the league topping team are concerned. To scrape a win against Fife, who are in the first intermission in tonight's game are sitting 6-1 still against Glasgow, a team in 7th place in the league. We should not have been forced to score 7 goals to win a 7-5 game against the Fife Flyers. That's awful. That's horrendous.
Yeah.
That's I know we got the 2 points, but that should have been a far easier 2 points. So that's a little bit disappointing for a team like the Giants. I know we're talking about the bottom of the table, but for a team like the Giants to be in the position that they're in now, they've only topped the table for the first time this season in the last couple of weeks. Really, that's a team that needs to be riding that high. They need to be there, they need to be setting themselves, and they need to establish a chokehold to not guarantee, nothing's guaranteed yet, but to at least put yourself in as good a position as possible. And then to lose against Dundee, we joke about the comments that have previously been made by some Belfast Giants players about we can't be losing against teams like this. And I know it wasn't said about Dundee, but realistically, and I know I'm possibly being harsh, but we should not be losing to teams like Dundee. I'm really, really sorry. But yeah, the middle third of the table looks entirely set. I think the only team that's maybe is that where they end up is probably Guildford. They could potentially end as high as 4th. I think the Cardiff Devils may have some more places to lose as we go through the back end of the season. I'll wait to see what happens, but Guildford are the ones that are sort of plus and minus 2, really, from where they are. The rest of it looks pretty set. The exciting part of the table is the top this year.
But definitely, by far. I know who's going to enjoy that graph the next graphic the next time he's on the podcast. I know Aaron will be, if he's watching this back, he'll be looking at that and be like, "Oh, I really like that graphic because it's exactly what he wanted it to do." So, fair play.
I will sort the issues so I don't have to share my screen for next time. I honestly, I thought that would work, and we live and learn.
There you go. You can only learn, exactly. Let's move our attention across the water and look at the NHL as it currently stands.
I know we've mentioned it again, but I was just going to throw up. So Challenge Cup, we mention it. We don't throw up the tables. I just wanted to throw this up because I wanted to mention one thing. See, if you go to the Elite League website and you can go through, you can obviously look at the standings in the league. You can go in and actually there's already a tab on the homepage of the Elite League where you can bring up the playoff brackets. Now, obviously, it all just says TBC at the minute. Do you know what they don't have? Is any sort of graphical representation of the Challenge Cup. You can go into the league standings, you can click the little drop down that gives you the option for the Challenge Cup. It's still the first round. It's the first round tables. So there is no easy to access graphic that shows you the progression through to the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup. That, to me, tells me how much time and effort the league wants to put into the Challenge Cup right now. It's just a little aside, but this is the clearest representation on the Elite League website of what is happening in the Challenge Cup right now. Now, we've got a game on right now. It's one of 4 games which will decide the finalists of the Challenge Cup, one of the highlight trophies of the year, supposedly, and that's as clear as it gets, is a little bit of text telling you the teams that are in the matchups and the dates at which they are playing. It is awful, and it smacks of just, we really don't give a toss about the Challenge Cup.
Which kind of we already knew anyway. We kind of assumed that anyway. Let's be fair. But yeah, no, there's no graphic, as you say, and it's just kind of like, here, just throw this together, and this is how you kind of follow it.
Do you want a quick update on how things currently stand? We are in the first intermission. We're well into the first intermission now of both games. So far, 20 minutes into the podcast, no goals yet. There were no goals at the end of the first period in both games, so Glasgow and Fife are still 6-1 to Glasgow at the end of the first, and in Sheffield, the Steelers have a 2-0 lead over the Cardiff Devils. So that game obviously is first of two legs. The return leg is being played next week, and we still apparently have to wait another 2 weeks to find out who the finalists are going to be, because Belfast and Nottingham don't finish their games until the 26th, which is another joke. But anyway,
Moving on.
I will keep you updated as games progress.
Let's turn our attention across the water to the NHL and look at the eastern side of things and the Atlantic Division first. Sitting in top spot there is the Florida Panthers with 55 games played, 67 points, followed by the Toronto Maple Leafs with 53 games played, 66 points, and the Ottawa Senators are in third, 54 games played, 62 points. In the Metropolitan Division then, the Washington Capitals sit top, 53 games played, 77 points. The Carolina Hurricanes are in second with 54 games played, 68 points, and the New Jersey Devils are in third, 55 games played, 66 points. The two wildcard spots currently held by the Detroit Red Wings and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Across the other side of the country, on the western side of things, in the Central Division, the Winnipeg Jets sit top, 55 games played, 79 points. The Dallas Stars are in second with 53 games played, 69 points. And Minnesota drop into third with 54 games played, 66 points. Pacific Division is the Edmonton Oilers. I was about to say Edinburgh Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers with top with 53 games played, 70 points. Vegas Golden Knights are in second with 54 games played, 68 points, and the LA Kings are in third, 50 games played, 60 points. The two wild card spots on that side of the country are the Colorado Avalanche and the Calgary Flames. Any comments to make on that, John? Anywhere at all in the league standings for the NHL so far?
Let's start with you, because it's just you and me. Let's open it up to you. You don't often get the chance to sit there and be questioned when it comes to the larger group when we're all here. But as we continually say, Toronto Maple Leafs are doing the business this year. It's they have slipped. They're no longer in first position in the Atlantic, but you are holding games in hand, which is good on your side. So yeah, how does it feel to be a Toronto Maple Leafs fan right now?
I mean, yeah, as you say, I mean, we've played 53 games for 66 points, whereas we've got the Florida who've played 55 and 67 points. So we do have those two games in hand. So hopefully, if we continue our form that we have, win those two games in hand, move 4 points ahead of move 4 points ahead then of Florida. Everything's looking great that way. As you say, everything's in Leafs land. I guess everything is looking great. Form has been brilliant this season. Continues to play amazingly well. Coaching changes obviously aside. Obviously, that was obviously a big change this year in Toronto, is the fact that obviously we parted ways with Sheldon Keefe. He obviously has moved down to New Jersey and he's doing his thing in New Jersey, keeping New Jersey up there in the top three spots so far this season. But Toronto under new leadership has flourished, shall we say, and they've performed well. But as you keep joking around, we could win that division, but still come up against. Well, actually, at this moment we wouldn't actually be coming up against Boston, because Boston actually aren't in a wild card spot. As we currently stand, Boston are outside of the wild card spots for the playoffs. Now it's only the start of February, and we still have roughly 2 months to go. 2 full months to go before those Stanley Cup spots are starting to get cemented in place. Boston can still do the business and move back up into those wild card spots, but as you always joke, we could come up against Boston, and Boston being the bogey team takes Toronto out first round. So yeah, we live with joy at the moment, but we always live with a bit of fear when it comes to the Stanley Cup. John, what about you?
Should we just throw in as well, even though Aaron's not here, we obviously mentioned where the Wild are when we come to talk about the West, but we didn't mention where Philly currently are. They're sitting way down in 9th position for the wild cards in the East, so looking increasingly unlikely that they will be able to take a run. But what I will say is the East is very, very tight. It might only take a run of games. I think it's probably still unlikely. They're sitting on 53 points with the same number of games played as the Boston Bruins, so 7 points back. Boston sitting same number of games played, 55, but on the same number of points as Tampa. So there are likely changes still to be made there. Nothing is written in stone as far as they're concerned, but look, it's Philly. It's unlikely.
Yeah, 100%. What about you, John?
Least said the better, to be totally honest. The Preds had a nice little resurgence. The only bonus I've got is we're not sitting dead last anymore, which is a nicer position to be in than we were at the very start of the season. But no, I don't know what's going on. On paper, that team with the likes of Stamkos brought in over the summer, we should be potential. We should at least not be having to fight where we are. I don't know what's going on. I am shocked that there hasn't been a coaching change, if I'm totally honest. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand Barry Trotz's marriage to the current coaching staff. I get that this is his first Poily-less season where he feels like he has to make a stamp and create an identity within the team, but this is not an identity I want for the Nashville Predators. And to be totally honest, wasn't entirely enamored with. I get that we're getting into realms of politics, but Nashville found itself in the news as well this week for the fans being somewhat vocal during the Canadian national anthem. Now, admittedly, Nashville is, in inverted commas, a southern state. They are a red state. But booing during O Canada because of all the politicking going on between Canada and America right now. So yeah, very very interesting times to be a Nashville fan living abroad.
I see that Florida Panthers, again, not to stay political, but the Florida Panthers also drew some heat as well this week for meeting up with the president of the United States, the current president of the United States, being the previous holders of the current holders,
Well, I
should I say?
suppose that's kind of expected, isn't it? If you're the champions, I'm sure you'll be meeting with the NBA world or the whatever NBA champions. He will most likely meet with the Super Bowl champions after this weekend. So yeah, like it is what it is. You can take whatever heat, but it's kind of
Although,
expected on
if we look back to when we were still doing the podcast during the last administration that he was running, and during that last administration, certain teams didn't turn down their decision to go to the White House during the playoff after the playoff win. I'm just saying. But anyway, moving on. John, if we haven't got anything else, let's get stuck into period one because we have some very meaty stories to discuss. So with that, let's get stuck into period one of hockey. Okay, period one is a roundup of stories from here in the UK. Let's just start with probably the biggest story so far. I would say this year in the Elite League, and that is the story that came out that broke just yesterday, February 4th. If you're listening to the podcast, it was back on Tuesday because you'll be listening to the podcast on Friday. Yes, I always get confused. The Fife Flyers put out a statement. Owners and directors Tom Muir and Jack Wishart put out a statement to say, after almost 30 years of involvement with the Fife Flyers, we've taken the difficult decision to step down from the operation of this wonderful club. Fife Flyers have a long and colourful history, and we now look forward for those who wish to write the next chapter. We look forward to welcoming those out there who have the passion, drive, and determination to help keep this historic club going for another 87 years. Any interested parties are invited to contact us so we can pass on the baton and share new ownership news prior to the end of the 2024-2025 season. Therefore, we ask that any interested party or parties should make contact by this email, and they put an email address, in the first instance where all inquiries will be considered at the strictest confidence. As our era as custodians of the storied club at the heart of Fife draws to a close, we hope you can join us to raise the rafters, not only at home games, but also some special club events. Firstly, to celebrate our partnership with CAS, CHAS, CAS, started back in the mid Cass, started back in the mid-90s by former coach Mark Morrison. Together as a club, you've helped us to raise an outstanding 97,577 for this amazing charity. Our aim is to reach 100,000 by the end of the season. We would love you to share your generosity one more time at one of our home games where we'll be raising money. More details to be announced soon. Secondly, since taking over in 1996, we've had the privilege of having some outstanding players and personalities put on the blue, white, and gold with pride. We feel now is the time to solidify their place in our history books. Therefore, we are pleased to announce the retirement of number 11, Todd Dudiam, number 12, Stephen King, and officially retired number 17, Mark Morrison. These events will take place throughout the month of March, with more details to follow soon. We will also be hosting a skit with the Flyers end of the season party and also various jersey raffles as we raise cheers to their years, mark the end of our time with the club, and look forward to the beginning of a new chapter. While there have been many highs and lows over the years, this club and its community and fans has been an important part of our lives for the last 3 decades and will always hold a special place in our hearts. To the volunteers, fans, players, staff and teams, past and present, thank you forever. Blue, white and gold, Tom and Jack. Let's dissect that first before we talk about the statement then that the Elite League put out. But we've talked before, and I think we've been very vocal in our comments that we've made in the past about what the Fife Flyers need to do in order to move ahead and strengthen themselves as a club and their standings within the Elite League. And I think one of the big things that we have talked about, John, and you'll agree with me, is we've always talked about that a time needs to come when the current ownership holds up their hands and says something more needs to be done.
Sorry, Marty, not to butt in there, but we have a goal in the Glasgow Fife game. Still waiting for confirmation of a goal score, but it currently sits at 7-1 early in the second period.
Thanks. As I was saying, we've talked about the fact that one of the things that they might have needed to consider was not just obviously they have obviously the change of coaching this last year, also the previous years where we talked about that, but also we did talk and discuss about the ownership and how that could potentially be something that had to be on the table at some time in the future. For this to come
Listen, you can get as angry at me as you want, but I'm not the one scoring the goals here. We have a goal in the Challenge Cup. The Cardiff Devils have clawed one back. The goal scored at 22-25 on the power play by number 88, Joey Martin. That game is currently 2-1 to the Sheffield Steelers.
I love your kind of commentary-esque kind of voice that you go into there as well.
I'll have you
funny.
know that I am a semi-professional at this. Thank you very much. If any teams are looking for a radio, like an audio only commentary or like audio updates to go out, like I'm the man. Like I'll sit here and do it in my house. Like I'm quite happy to do it. I'm already doing it here on the podcast. If someone wants to throw a couple of quid my way to do that for them, absolutely, I'm all here for it. You know, like Soccer Saturday, all that sort of stuff. Like I'll be the correspondent in the field, giving those Cammy-esque goal updates. Like I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
As I was saying, before you kindly interrupted with the goal horn, obviously for it to happen at this time of the season, you know, did it come as a massive surprise? Like, where was your thoughts when you first seen this statement go out this week?
It was a surprise. It was a shock. The main reason being that the Flyers owners have up to this point been very, very good at over the summer over promising contact and then under delivering as the season goes on. We're basically at the point now where the fans don't expect to hear anything unless something significant happens, like the departure of all the Kazakh players that we had earlier in the season, or something significant like the roof blowing off like it did a couple of weeks ago. Now, has that been part of everything? It's interesting when you read into the statement from the Elite League about when they were contacted by the Fife Flyers about this. I don't particularly think the roof coming off the arena during Storm Eowyn was a final nail. Don't get me wrong, though. I imagine that the Flyers were being leaned on for potentially helping out with repair costs and everything to do with the rink. But the timing, I get, and I also don't get. The Tom and Jack have clearly made this decision. They haven't made it lightly. They've been very, very clear for a long time that they were going to stick around, that the Flyers was their going concern. They've clearly made this decision to try and drum up some interest, to bring people on board who might be potential new owners, and to maybe try and give a little bit of clarity to the fans about the process that's going to currently be ongoing about seeking new owners. Now, have they maybe jumped the gun a little bit? I think they have, because nothing is in place. They literally, this seems to be their way of going to the market looking for new owners, is to announce this and to announce it publicly. Is it maybe that something was in the work in the background and it's fallen through, and they're now backed into a corner, and it's essentially, look, no matter what happens, we're out come the end of the season. Like, we're now on the clock. We know when the Flyer season's going to end because they've got their last game is in the books when it comes to the Elite League already. We know when the Tom and Jack era comes to an end. There is a date on it. So now is the pressure on for them to try and find a new owner. Now, they've done that, and what it's done is whip up a lot of feeling within the fan base. So there were news stories from some local outlets where fans were being asked what their reaction was, and it was a combination of shock and, to be totally honest, a little bit of dismay, because a lot of fans really don't know if new owners are going to step up and be found in time to secure the Fife Flyers' place in the Elite League. And Marty, that might be a good point, if you don't mind me jumping into the Elite League statement, because I think there's a lot that we can read into the Elite League statement. So the Elite League, literally minutes after the Fife Flyers put out their own statement, in which they said the Elite Ice Hockey League was informed in mid-January that the Fife Flyers directors Tom Muir and Jack Wishart would be retiring at the end of the season, and they would be looking for new owners for the team. The league put on record their thanks for Tom and Jack since joining the league in 2011. They then go on to say the Fife Flyers are the oldest hockey team in the country, and they'll do everything they can to ensure they remain part of the Elite League. Tony Smith, apparently still league chairman, by the way, even though we were told that wasn't the fact. We hope the Fife Flyers are able to find new owners, and would of course work with them to continue the club's participation in the top flight of British ice hockey. The process of finding new owners could happen quickly, or it may take time. Therefore, we have agreed to keep the Flyers franchise open in the Elite League for a further 2 seasons to allow them to return at a later time if needed. We hope this won't be necessary, but we are also aware of timescales involved and would want new owners to know that they are welcome in the Elite League whenever they are found. We hope that we'll be able to see Elite League ice hockey in Fife next season, but the responsible thing to do is to also be prepared in case this isn't possible in the short term. We have plans in place for our league operations, where were we to be at 9 teams, giving teams the same number of home games as teams have now. This ensures that planning for the 25-26 season can continue at the other 9 member teams, and that fans across the league can also renew or take up season tickets without worrying that the number of games could be changed. Marty, biggest part of that statement to me is the franchise place for the Flyers being left open for 2 seasons. That's not a just in case. I would assume at this point that we're going to be a 9-team league going into 25-26. Do you read the same into that?
I read the same as you. As soon as I seen this statement and I read this statement, I kind of thought to myself, that is a clear indication that they do not believe that the Fife Flyers will be up and running under new management by the time it comes to the start of the 2025-2026 campaign. Therefore, we'll be looking at a 9-team league next season. Whether or not the new owners are found and they decide to continue in the Elite League after that point and take up that franchise space that's going to be safe for the 2 years, that's another question that has to be asked. But the fact that they've said we're going to leave it open for 2 years, therefore they have the ability to come at any point. I would say that they're not imagining that it's going to happen next year, and I think we should be preparing ourselves for a 9-team league next year. I definitely think that's what we're looking at.
Yep. Murray, to me, I know a lot of people are talking about the negatives around all this. Obviously, the potential for us to lose the Flyers going forward in the Elite League. Now, if that was to happen, I have serious concerns about the potential of the Flyers even continuing on as a going concern, because right now they are in the absolute doldrums. The Flyers name itself does carry a lot of weight. I understand that, but if you're a business owner, are you seriously looking at that as a potential business? Where I see opportunity, though, is we've seen it in other places like Manchester. Is this an opportunity for a wholesale change in Kirkcaldy? Um, my thoughts on this are, if someone is interested in retaining top flight hockey in Kirkcaldy, is now the time for a new rink alongside a new ownership of a team? Are we looking for someone to come in not just with enough to keep a franchise going, but enough investment to renew that rink, to make it a standout place in Scotland for ice hockey and for other ice sports? Because look, we can have combination tenants, that's not a big deal, but to look at the storied history of the Fife Flyers, they're in a major anniversary year in the next couple of years. They're coming up for 90 years of existence in 2028, or 2028 will be their 90 years. We don't want to see the Flyers disappear. So to me, this is not just about keeping the Flyers going as a going concern. I think this needs to be wholesale renewal of the Fife Flyers entirely. Would you say this is the opportunity?
I would say so. I think what you're going to need, while it's controversial to say, I think what you're going to need for new ownership, as you say, we're hurling in a massive, another benchmark, 90 years history of the Fife Flyers. I think what you're going to need, and again, this is a controversial thing to say, but I think wholesale branding change and everything else to kind of fit with the times. I think someone who comes in who takes ownership of the Fife Flyers needs to be ballsy enough to have the confidence to drive forward a change that will take a look at every aspect of the club, from arena.
We have a goal in the Glasgow Clan Fife Flyers game, and unsurprisingly, it has come from the Glasgow Clan at 31:59 of the second period, or obviously 11 minutes and 59 seconds of the second period. The goal was scored even-handed and was scored by number 74, Darian Kielb, assisted by Liam Finlay. It's currently 8-1 to the Glasgow Clan.
That looks like it's going to go double figures. Oof. It's funny that we're talking about Fife and obviously that game's going on, but as I was saying, we needed everything from arena changes right to, I know we joke around about it, and Dave kind of mentioned this in the last podcast, the fact that, they don't even, the fact that how can you take a team serious enough whenever you don't even have the infrastructure in place to have like a working car park where there's not potholes where your car could literally go into sudden, like, just like danger from going into one of those and getting drowned. But we need everything from arena changes to off ice product, everything, I think, top down. Some things work really well. And I'll give them their dues. For Fife Flyers, some things work well. How they use the branding currently is good, and how they kind of come up with their ideas for their jerseys and stuff is top notch. That is a team that's working on that. The branding, people will say, well, it's a brand that should stay because the brand has been there for so long, and therefore it's synonymous with Fife Flyers. And by changing a brand that has been...
We have another goal in the Glasgow Clan Fife Flyers game. This time, though, it's come from the Fife Flyers. Their second goal of the game has come at 32:23 on the game clock, and it's been scored by number 22, Felix Martineau, assisted by number 37, Lucas Chido. That game sits 8-2 at 32:23.
As I was saying, the Brandon thing could be a controversial comment, but I think everything needs to be considered when it comes to new ownership. What I did find really funny today when I was just like looking all, I was just online as usual, just kind of scrolling through, and I was on.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm really not. This is fantastic. We have a goal in the cup game between the Sheffield Steelers and the Cardiff Devils. At 30:21 on the game clock, we have a power play goal for the Sheffield Steelers. That makes it 3-1. That goal was scored by Mitchell Balmas and assisted by number 14, Patrick Watling. 30 minutes and 21 seconds gone in that game. Sheffield Steelers 3, Cardiff Devils 1.
Where was I going with that? Oh yes, I on X today.
No idea, mate. Honestly, I'm just keeping an eye on these games.
On X today, I did see a comment about someone reached out to a certain famous celebrity who has been well known for purchasing lower league teams, and they described Fife as the Wrexham of Scotland, and reaching out to Ryan Reynolds to see if he'd be interested in purchasing their club.
That's really, really unfair to Wrexham, to be totally honest. Look, it might. Do you see stuff like that? Like, I accept where they're going with that, because do you know what? That's probably not the wrong way to look at this. Fife have history. They have more history in the sport than any other team in the UK. They are the oldest team by a long way. They are the most established. They're one of the most storied. When you look at their ties to the game in Canada and North America as a whole, the history stretches back massively and intertwines with the heart and soul of the game. So it would be entirely heartbreaking to see the Fife Flyers disappear as a franchise. Now, my worry with this is there's nowhere for the Flyers to go if it's not the Elite League. The Kestrels currently have the SNL. They also take part in they could, participate in potentially EIHL. We're starting to see the EIHL creep into Scotland. Realistically, the Kestrels are that team. They're at that level. They are established in using their local talent and using Brits and particularly Scots guys. We know what Fife has done for development of British talent. That's clearly been a massive issue as we've gone through this season. The recruitment of young Brits into the Fife Flyers this year was a complete disaster. We saw that with a heavy reliance on imports, especially the Kazakhs that were brought in. For as much as we love Tom Coolan for what he brought to Fife and what he brought as a personality and as a person, if that team was built by him, that's been a significant departure and a significant part of why Fife are now struggling as badly as they are. Which is really, really sad to say for someone of Tom Coolan standing within the game. But it's been a big, big issue. So my biggest issue is, where do the Fife Flyers go if it's not the Elite League? And I worry that if they go, they don't come back, would be my big problem. And does, not to say that they don't come back, I think what would end up happening is there'd be a rebranding of the Kestrels to the Flyers. But I think effectively that kills off any chance of ever, probably in our lifetime, of seeing the Fife Flyers at top flight ever again.
Never say never, because like if you think about Edinburgh, yes, we haven't seen Edinburgh Capitals back in top flight of ice hockey just yet, but they're making the right moves. Edinburgh Capitals,
they're not going to come. They're not going to come. The way the Caps are playing just now, the way they're playing the game, they are doing very, very well by playing SNL very well. They are very, very. They found a level where they can compete and where they can afford to play the game. The Murrayfield rink is still the Murrayfield rink. That's not going to change. The investment in these areas without new significant ownership is not going to come. And that's why I think with this change of ownership in Fife, this is the opportunity to level up the game in Scotland. And all credit to somebody putting it out there and saying, look, it might not be Ryan Reynolds, but, well, probably isn't going to be Ryan Reynolds, because if you've been keeping tabs of what's going on with him right now, he's probably going to have some legal fees to pay. But someone out there might be looking at it going, how do I replicate that success? How do I do it in a weird, interesting, and innovative way that puts me on the market, puts me in the headlines? And what could be better than the oldest hockey franchise in the UK? What could be better than bringing investment to that, bringing investment to somewhere like Kirkcaldy in the east of Scotland, where investment is hard to come by at the best of times, and investment in ice hockey is incredibly hard to come by at the best of times. Let's see that be the next success story. That would be fantastic. I'll take Will Ferrell.
We did joke around in our WhatsApp group about a Euro Millions lottery purchase, and becoming the D14 or the door 14 Fife Flyers.
I did like Aaron's idea of rebranding all of the sections within the stands in Fife. So it's door 14, door 1, door 14, door 2, door 14, door 3. I'm all for that. Let's win the lottery, and let's buy a team.
Sounds good. John, let us move on to our next story, staying in Scotland. And this is a story you put in. Obviously, this is the stories coming out of the Glasgow Clan this past week as well.
Yeah, so this was interesting. And I do wonder, maybe I'm being quite cynical about this, but we got the statement on the 3rd of February. So that was, Monday? That Gareth Chalmers was departing the role of CEO with the Glasgow Clan. Now, that's a combination role with the Glasgow Clan and with the Braehead Arena. Now, Gareth had spent, I think, the guts of 10 years in that job. He'd definitely been the longest incumbent since that team were formed and since they joined the Elite League. But I think it's fair to say that over the last few years, Gareth's involvement with the team led to some pretty substantial criticism of his management and approach, especially given a particular signing which was almost made a couple of seasons ago. That was obviously brought up on social media when this announcement was made. However, the next day, February 4th, the same day that we get all this news coming out of Fife, the Glasgow Clan made the announcement that they were appointing Russell Smith as the new CEO of the business. Russell, as they say, is a seasoned leader in the sports and events industry, having most recently led and launched the Royal and Ancients' first golf and family entertainment venue, Golfit, prior to being the executive director at Doncaster Racecourse and Exhibition Centre, Newcastle Racecourse, and through his journey has held senior positions within Hibernian Football Club and the Scottish Rugby Union. Marty, we've got turmoil at one team and seeming stability with a change of hands at another. Do you think the timing of all of this is just happened, or do you think that Glasgow were maybe aware of the news that was coming out of Fife and chose to use that time to make their news look better?
I don't think so. I don't think it was that. I don't think that would be the case. I think it's just by chance that the both stories came out around about the same time. If we're led to believe that the Elite League chairman and the Elite League board were made aware of the departure and the sale of the Fife Flyers.
We have a goal in the Challenge Cup semi-final between the Sheffield Steelers and the Cardiff Devils. Once again, we have a goal from the Cardiff Devils. At 34:22 on the game clock, we have a goal scored by number 96 Cole Sanford, assisted by number 21 Kohen Oleszewski. That makes the game 3-2 at 34:22 in the game.
Thank you. As I was saying, I just think it's coincidental that it's came around at this time. As I was saying, I think the fact that the board knew of the intention of the Fife Flyers ownership change and sale of the club. We know that the board is made up of the owners of the clubs. Therefore, the fact that the owners of the Glasgow Clan would have known that this statement was coming. They probably knew this statement was coming out on this day, but it just so happened that they had also made their move the day before the statement put out to say that they're departing, they were having departures, and therefore to make sure that to steady the ship after the announcement that that Gareth Chalmers was leaving, that they had to make sure they steadied the ship by making sure that the announcement the next day was that don't worry, we actually have someone already in place, and it's the person we have in place. So I just think it's coincidental. I don't think it's I don't think it was a planned thing. I just think that it just happened the way it did.
Yeah, I think call me cynical. It's just I don't know. The Scottish teams in particular have never directly, but have always felt like they're very nippy with each other. Um, uh, it might just be a case of them trying to stir up the rivalries and all the rest of it, but it just seemed fortuitous to me that while we've got, like I said, we've got turmoil unfolding in one team and this seeming stability with the change in hands. And look, it's a change in hands that I would say was a pretty 50-50 even split in the Glasgow fan base. Of some were happy to see the back of Gareth, and some were maybe giving him the kudos for the job that he had done, while others were fairly vocal in pointing out his potential role in some major issues, and maybe the lack of success that club has had in the face of seeming to be at least in their spending power and their potential just really falling short. So
Mm.
it was just very, very interesting to see a lot of the big news, especially this week in particular, coming out of those two Scottish teams.
Yeah. I think it's no matter what, it's a massive story, which I think in some ways kind of got a bit quietened by the fact that Fife put out the story at the same time. They probably didn't have that intention, but it's probably also maybe just a good thing. Maybe in some ways they kind of like, well, the change wasn't to be this, like we didn't want this to be a big story kind of thing, but that's kind of what's happened, I suppose, so far. But yeah, it's a massive change. Obviously after 10 years having Gareth there to move away now from that to completely new direction. Be interesting to see what the new CEO decides should be the way forward for this team, for the Glasgow Clan. So yeah, be interesting to see over the next year. Again, I question just the timing of like when this took place. Normally we see these types of things happening at the end of the season. We usually see, towards the end of the season, the announcements being made, like we see this maybe in the last few weeks of the season where you've got maybe 4 weeks before that it's coming to an end, and then they make an announcement to say coming to the end of this at the end of the season, Gareth will walk away as blah blah blah. But the fact that his departure is pretty much immediate, and this new CEO is coming in directly hot on his heels mid season, mid in
Does
inverted
it give
commas,
you
because
does it
we're
give you the impression that they've probably this has been something that's been coming? Well,
yeah.
obviously it's been something that's coming. They've advertised that post. They've got their man now. So is it just been a fact of not wanting to share changing staffing with the fans until it was a sure thing? At the end of the day, it's the businessman. It's not someone who really, I know they are, but isn't really involved in the day-to-day management running of the team in the way that you really kind of give to the fans in the same way that you do with coaching staff or director of hockey. Like he was the CEO, he was the businessman behind where the money comes from, how it's spent, how the arena's run, because that's obviously a dual role. So do you think it was just a case of the ownership there being like, look, this is a change that we will tell the fans about, but in all honesty, we don't have to tell them what this process is.
Yeah, could be. Um, yeah, could be. It's just again, from the way it's done, I kind of do question whether or not this is like a two-way decision that was made? Like, was it a conversation that was had? Was it a decision that the powers that be in Glasgow made a decision, right? We no longer want Gareth here, or is it a question of Gareth made his intentions clear that actually he's looking something new and looking something different, and it was maybe partly his decision to maybe move on? I don't get that from this statement. I get from the statement that it was maybe that he was being asked to leave rather than a two-way thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of read
Well, do
into
you
it that
reckon
he was.
do you think that's maybe always been in the cards? Like we've got Michael O'Rourke, who's come in as the new owner of the clan. Obviously, we know that Aaron Murphy is there as one of the management team. So has it just been a case of waiting to find the right fit for the new owners, and they've wanted to keep the wheels turning by keeping Gareth on board? Now they've got their man. They've said, right, it's time to go.
It definitely feels like it's the final point that need to be made for the Glasgow clan, if that makes sense. Like I feel like it's the final point that new ownership took over, new background staff took over and were involved with the whole process moving forward. And obviously that new ownership came in, but the one consistent thing that stayed the same was Gareth. So therefore, now that he has moved and he's moved on from the Glasgow clan, it's kind of like a bold statement to say, right, we finally at the point where the old hands that were here in Glasgow are now gone. Therefore, it's now a new way of moving forward, and now they're fully into that. If that makes sense, I kind of feel that's kind of the statement that's being put out here.
Yep.
Yeah. Big changes anyway. It will be interesting to see just what does come in there, and if we see wholesale changes coming in Glasgow or what that looks like. But it will be an interesting time when we see what happens with this new CEO. So we'll keep our eyes peeled there over the coming weeks. John, I think that is the last story for this period. We have two penalty box stories to talk about. So with that, we will move straight into our penalty box segment for period one. Okay, our penalty box segment is just those stories, bans, and hits that have been brought to attention in the past week or two, especially ones that have been flagged by the Department of Player Safety, DOPS. John, we have two Fife Flyers players receiving suspensions. Do you want to take us through those?
Yep, so both these bans are coming from the same game. This is Saturday just passed in the game against the Belfast Giants. At the end of the game, we had two incidents, both involving Belfast Giants netminder Jackson Whistle. Thankfully, Jackson Whistle has not taken any supplementary discipline as a result of these. The first one, Fife forward number 94, Kieran Craig. He came forward as the clock expired at the end of the game and collided with Jackson Whistle. A scrum ensued between multiple Giants and Flyers players. Whistle pushes Fife forward number 5, Noah Delmas, to the ice. After contact between Whistle and Delmas, Whistle then goes back into the scrum to confront Kieran Craig. Line person restrains both Whistle and Craig. Craig, with two hands on his stick, makes a spearing motion, making contact with Whistle's helmet. This is spearing. The Elite League Department of Player Safety goes on to say, it's important to note that what causes this play to rise to the level of supplemental discipline is the intent. While we acknowledge the spear was not forceful, there is still a risk to injury due to the contact in the helmet head area. So to summarise, this was spearing and effective immediately. Fife Flyers forward number 94, Kieran Craig, is fined and suspended for 1 game. Connected to that then, we had the much publicised coming together of the two netminders, because not only did Jackson Whistle get involved with a couple of the Flyers skaters, he also got involved with Janis Voris. Fife Flyers goaltender number 36, Janis Voris, at the end of the game comes forward into the scrum while Jackson Whistle is tied up with multiple other players, skates up the length of the ice and tries to go for Jackson Whistle. Now, in amongst all this, Voris has been shown to be the instigator in this because of the length of the ice that he has skated to engage in an altercation with Jackson Whistle. This effectively is being the aggressor of an altercation in the final 5 minutes of a game, and therefore he is seen to be the instigator and was fined and suspended for 1 game. Let alone all that, he was made to look a bit of an idiot because not only did he try to fight Jackson Whistle, Jackson made him look like a complete idiot by pulling his jersey up and over his own head. And I'm pretty sure from the looks of it that Jax actually got a couple of good swings in as well. So Voris has just made himself look to be a complete tool in this one. The videos that were going round, like, I know we are supportive of the Fife Flyers and everything that they're going through right now, but there's a lot of people on the ice making some poor decisions when it comes to what they're trying to do. Voris is just the clearest example I've seen yet of the turmoil that team is going through. Marty, you've seen the videos as well. Like, we posted them at the weekend whenever we saw all this going off. What's your take on it?
Yeah, as you say, it just seems like it's just getting worse for Fife. And my main question was when I seen these suspensions come in place, I was like, it's fine. They're going to suspend 2 players, 1 game apiece. But they're not going to have to sit those suspensions anyway because they have a history of the fact that they kind of just like turn a blind eye to Top's decisions on bans for Fife Flyers players. So my question was going to be, when do we see the Fife Flyers players in question actually have to sit these games out? Because will it be special dispensation being allowed for this time around to make sure Fife is able to ice a full team? I doubt that's going to happen this time around.
Well,
but
let's take that for a second. Let's take Voris's for example. So put Craig's to one side. I think yes, it's spearing. It's a light touch. We haven't really seen much in the way of spearing calls in that, and I think they've taken account of everything. They've given him 1 game. I think that's probably fair. Now, I haven't seen video on this, so the Elite League may be taking a light handle with this one. The one I do think they've taken a particularly light take on is this 5-minute instigator for Voris because he skates the length of the ice. Now, have they given it a light touch because it's Fife? So we've already seen a ban be put back, and we're now expecting that to happen later on in March. The guy whose ban was overturned to make sure that the Flyers could put out a competitive team against the Giants, even though they brought in multiple 2-ways straight after that. Now, getting hold of 2-way skaters, that's probably a little bit easier than it would be getting a hold of a replacement netminder. Given that earlier this season, while Tom Coolan was still in charge, they got rid of their Brit backup. Their Little was done away with in the Flyers team, and they've brought in one of the Kestrel's netminders in place. But with all due respect, he's not going to be up to a game against a Sheffield Steelers, a Nottingham Panthers, or a Belfast Giants. Then we get scores that are absolutely insane. The game that's currently in intermission right now is Glasgow 8, Fife 2. Voris is in goal for this game. And that's the scoreline. So can you imagine what would happen? So in a roundabout way, Marty, what I'm asking you is, has that ban, 1 game ban for him skating the length of the ice and trying to put the bag into Jackson Whistle, has that ban been a light touch because the Elite League's like, we can't afford to ban the Fife Flyers netminder, one of their import netminders, for more than a game?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. Has he already set that 1 game? Has he already set that 1 game out then?
Yeah, he would have sat it on Sunday against
Sunday?
Coventry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think you're right. I think there is a potential that they go a bit light on this, and the only way we would know would be, and it's not going to happen again this season because it's very, very rare we see it. But or maybe we'll see an instigating thing in some case, but we're not going to see 2 goalies go up against it. We're not going to see a goalie skid down the ice crossing the red line again this season. So we don't really have we can't go, well, we'll wait and see what happens next time around to see if they make the same decision the second time around for another thing. But
it was interesting though. It was interesting online this week because obviously goalie fights are goalie fights. They're always great crack. In the NHL, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, we saw Marc-Andre Fleury trying to go and the refs not letting him getting in the way. He wanted it, and they weren't for letting him have it. But it got people chatting in the Elite League about the last time they saw a goalie fight. And being totally honest, because I'm later to the Elite League in particular than you guys, I actually don't think I've ever in person seen a goalie fight. The only one that I'm aware of, and it took some social media posts about it to jog my memory, was Andrew Dixon going for Ben Bounds
Oh yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
So my question to you is going to be, goalie fights. Have you seen goalie fights like in your Elite League time?
Not that I can think off the top of my head. I've seen. Have I seen goalie fights? Have I seen? I haven't seen goalie on goalie. To be fair, I don't think that's something I've seen in the past. Dave's probably got a better memory than I do, but it's not something I can think of. I've seen goalies maybe getting into a bit of an altercation with like a defenseman or a forward. I've seen that a few times in the past, but not a goalie on goalie type fight. Unless it's been a bench
I'm trying to
clearance.
remember. Obviously not goalie on goalie, but did what's his name? The old was it Coventry netminder, the angriest goalie in history. What did you call him again?
Oh,
I had it in my head and then it's gone. But did he not drop the gloves with someone at some point in Belfast? Anyway, this
I
is
don't know.
fantastic radio. This
Yeah,
is
I
great
can't
radio and
remember.
probably the sort of
Again,
stuff that we should have prepped.
this is the kind of thing we need Dave for, because sometimes Dave has an elephant's memory for this type of thing, so he can go, "Yes, exactly that happened." But unfortunately, he's not here, so we'll have to ask him and maybe expand on that. Um, that's it, I think, for our penalty box. Don't think there's anything else, John, to
No,
penalties
that's
this
it.
one.
We're
Perfect.
ready for period 2.
Great. We'll get stuck into our period 2 of hockey. Just because Dave isn't here, I will continue on with period 2, and John, you can still take on your period 3 if that's okay. Period 2
That
is
was
a
the
run.
that was the panic. That was the panic. I just didn't know what way we were doing it because we failed to discuss that before we came on here.
That's fine.
I can give you an intermission update on the games if you like. We are in the second intermission of both games. I mentioned towards the end of period 1 there, the Glasgow Fife game is sitting at 8-2. And the Sheffield Cardiff Challenge Cup semi-final first round game went into the second intermission 3-2. So Cardiff have actually clawed back to a 1-goal differential going into the final period in Sheffield. Obviously, if that game ends in a tie, there won't be any overtime. It would go back to Cardiff, and any ties would be settled in overtime there.
Grand. We have 3 stories in this period. This is stories from that are from across the pond or from anywhere else across the world of hockey. We have 3 stories. We're going to start off with a story over in the NHL, and we talked about this story briefly last episode. We talked about the fact that the Utah Hockey Club were running into a number of legal issues around the use of certain names and branding. This past week, there has been another update on the Utah Hockey Club's long journey to establish this identity. 3 final logos were leaked online, and the 3 names, obviously, as part of those, have been leaked. Did you add this onto your slide, John?
No, it didn't. Sorry, I didn't have a chance. But give me a second. Give me a second. I can throw them up on the screen.
No worries. So I'll take you through it, and John will get them up. So the leak shows the logos the team is considering using for the names Utah Hockey Club. That is the Utah Mammoth, Utah Outlaws, as well as mock-up showing the logos on the home black jersey and watermark logos as well. Sorry, there's another Outlaws. Yes, Outlaws, Mammoth, and also is that Yeti as well? I think is it? No, 2 Mammoths.
No, so Yeti has already been thrown out by the Department of Patents and
Oh,
Trademarks or
sorry.
whatever
Yes,
it
it's
is
just
because of
Utah.
the Yeti coolers. So what they've done is they've gone with the 2 names that they can still stick with when it comes to branding, which is the Mammoth and the Outlaws,
And the Outlaws,
and then
and then
they've
Utah
used
Hockey.
the
Yes.
Yeti logo, which is clearly like mountains and a Yeti face, but sticking with Utah Hockey Club as the brand for the team itself.
Yeah. So the one thing that is noticeable is that the three logos all feature the same color treatment. So the black, light blue, and silver. Mammoth and Outlaws are fairly just kind of run-of-the-mill designs. I did see this, and as soon as I seen this, even before I read this in the stories, the one thing I will say is that especially that Outlaws logo, 100% looks like something that I have seen in a created team in the EA Sports NHL games. 100%, I think that logo is in there. I think if you want to create your own team, I think that logo's there that you can put on your jersey. Maybe I'm wrong, but it looks scarily similar. I suppose, John, the main question is, I mean, branding wise, from the fact that this leak has went out, we talked about the names last week, in the last podcast 2 weeks ago, we talked about these names, but now that we've seen the names, now we see the actual logos. What's your take?
Being totally honest, I don't like any of them. I get what they're doing with the logo. They are staying very, very simple. They're doing what Belfast and Cardiff have done recent times. It's going with the flat, non 3D logo. It's scalable. It's color interchangeable. It's all that stuff that the brands will tell you to do now, to make things simple so that you can do whatever you want to with your logo. I'm struggling to see identity in them. What I will say is, I do like the combination of going with a nice logo and sticking with Utah Hockey Club. I'm going to interrupt myself here. We have a goal in the Glasgow Clan Fife Flyers game. The third period has just gotten started. At 41:36 on the game clock, the Glasgow Clan have scored through number 10, Liam Finlay. That makes the scoreline in Glasgow: the Glasgow Clan 9, Fife Flyers 2. Carrying on where I was on this, it doesn't matter which of these logos that you used. I would be inclined to stick with Utah Hockey Club, if I'm totally honest. The other ones just sound awful, if I'm totally honest. I really, really, really don't like them. They're not inspiring. I can't see branding being around it. The Outlaw would be a terrible generic mascot as well. Like, it would be one of those mascot costumes that you would buy off Temu and just put a hat and a scarf on. Like, I could honestly see somebody buying the Finn McCool costume that you can buy on disreputable websites and just putting a Stetson and a handkerchief on his mouth, and that's what we could potentially see in the NHL. The Mammoth, unless they go full, like, like Universal Studios, like 3 guys in a costume, this thing being enormous, and doing it that way. Because if you just do someone with a big elephant head and 2 legs walking around, I'm not for that, because that's going to look like some sort of Greek mythological monster. The Yeti, I could get behind if they do something individual and different with it. That face, as it looks on that logo, could be quite interesting, but the branding itself, I would just stick with Utah Hockey Club if it was me. Especially given we don't know how long that's going to last. Because let's bear in mind that this is a franchise which were moved to Utah because the league could no longer support the Arizona Coyotes still being in the league, playing in a college arena, and everything else. The wheels are still turning in the meantime on this big new arena and the potential return of the Coyotes. Now, would that be an expansion team? Would it be another relocation of this team? I don't know. Is it worth putting all the effort in right now for something that might only be temporary? I don't know. It's all up in the air for me.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly the same thing. You literally just put into words what I was thinking. What's the longevity of the Utah Hockey Club? Is the intention to move back to where the original team was from? And if so, why are they spending all this time and this money into the branding? But I suppose they need to do something to kind of make sure that while they have a team in Utah, that there is some kind of distinct identity for that team. I'd be interested to see which of these 3 does win out in the end. As you said, like the whole thing's uninspiring. I do just get logos just look like something that's just taken straight from a video game. Various different video games, to be honest. It's just they're just not.
But you know
It's
what?
not great.
That's becoming really, really standard now. Like I love I love the Belfast Giants, and I'll let the Belfast Giants away with it because we had, well, it's not the same as what we had before. It's so close to the old alt logo. So when that rebrand came a few years ago, um, it rubbed a few people because any major rebrand will always rub against people. But that one was a soft relaunch, if you like, for me. The Cardiff Devils, that was a much harder sort of refresh, rebrand. I understood why people got a little bit upset about the changing of the logo, the changing of sort of everything to do with that team, and how they did it. The all these logos are now designed in a particular way, which I think takes away the individual design. There it is. There's our old alt Finn McCool logo. So it's you've got them both on. I can't work out what to do with these two hands. No, that way and that way. There we go. They're not a million miles away from each other. Let's be totally honest. They didn't reinvent stuff massively, so that was easy to take. The Cardiff Devils, like I said, it was a much bigger rebrand. It got people a bit rankled, but when you're starting fresh, all these logos now are like someone has created something and then squashed it at the front. Um, I don't think they're ever going to be as timeless as some of the logos that we've seen from other teams. You look at the original six, or at least those of them that are still there. You look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. They change things here and there, but they know what their brand is. It's simple. It does the job. You look at the Detroit Red Wings, one of the most recognizable sporting logos out there. You look at the New Jersey Devils. It does exactly what it has to do. It's not overcomplicated. I think some of those logos have that problem where they just get too overcomplicated. But overcomplicated but simple. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. 100%. It does. I'm just aware of the time, John, and I've still got quite a bit to go through. So I'm going to move us on, if that's okay, to our next stories. And I know you've got two more stories in this period, so you can choose which one you want to start with.
Sure. Why don't we start with the really easy one? Let's start with the fact that the IIHF met this week and they have decided to continue the bans through the 2025-26 season of the Russian and Belarusian national teams. That means that they will not participate in World Championship IIHF Federation competitions for the 2025-26 season. That was strongly expected to be the case. It was thought to be very, very unlikely that those two nations would be allowed to participate given ongoing tensions in Eastern Europe. And that remains the case. Now, what's still to be determined is whether the Olympic Committee will continue with their bans for Russian and Belarusian athletes in the upcoming Winter Olympics. There have been conversations and there has been chat that the Olympic Committee, the International Olympic Committee, may be about to allow Russia and Belarus back into the Olympic Games. However, with the IIHF making their decision, it's very, very strongly expected that the IOC will continue on with their own bans of Russia and Belarus as well. Murray, I mean, it's no great surprise, is it, to not see these nations?
No, it's not. It's not. It doesn't come as a surprise at all. Yeah. Kind of was bound to come, I guess. Obviously, we know that Russia's, I suppose, shall we say, what's the long political way to put it? But their decision to go to war, I suppose, with the Ukraine, has had a massive impact on their athletes right across, even from the Olympics and stuff. So the fact that IIHF have just continued to continue with the ban and I suppose the security conditions not being met, necessary requirements for that, I think it's kind of I suppose it was just always going to come, I suppose, at this point.
Yep, pretty much. Murray, I've only got one other story for the second period here, and we've got the CHL final is in the offing. It will have been played before we come back for our next podcast. 18th of February in Zurich, we will have the ZSC Lions from Zurich will go up against Farstad Karlstad. They are the final two opponents, and they will go head-to-head for the CHL Championships. Face-offs for that, I believe, are 8:15 Central European time. Not totally sure what that equates to here in Britain, but I'm sure if you subscribe to certain sports channels or have access to a VPN somewhere, you will be able to catch that game online or on your TV if you're so inclined to see how those teams go.
Boom.
Can I just throw up actually, because we're obviously podcasting on a Wednesday instead of Thursday. Our most loyalist fan is able to tune in. Hi, Mark. And he's actually asked an interesting question about Russia and Belarus coming back in, and he's asked, how would you see them coming back? Where would you slot them back in? Would Russia just go back to the top division, or would they have to work up from the bottom? That's a really interesting question, because I know a lot of questions had been asked about their reintegration back into the IIHF standings and what that might have done, especially while GB were clinging on to top flight position. Would we just automatically have been shifted down? So, like, what would you do? Would you put them back in the top because that's where you kind of expect that they should be, or do you make them earn that top spot again?
I think, I mean, realistically, if to be fair, I would say they would have to earn the top spot again. But then, would there be an argument to say, well, actually, it was a decision that was made to take them out because of reasons, and therefore they should just slot back in exactly where they were when they came out? I don't think that's fair. And I think it should be that they play back into that top spot again. I think it should go in and have to work their way up. That's just my opinion anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think they have to earn it as well. We have a goal in the all-Scottish tie in the Elite League. This time, though, it's come from the Fife Flyers. At 46:03 on the game clock, the Fife Flyers have scored through number 94, Kieran Craig, assisted by number 23, Massimo Carosa, and number 78, Michael Tsitsi. So that makes that game 9-3 to the Glasgow Clan. Can they make it 10 before the end of that game? Marty, that's, I mean, probably a nice jumping off point to steer away from the politics of Eastern Europe and have a look at the international ban bin.
Yep, let's do that. Let's move on to the penalty box segment for period 2. Okay, we have one suspension that I kind of wanted to highlight and talk about in this period for this period, and that is the suspension of Hartman from the Wild, which has been suspended for 10 games in total for roughing. Minnesota Wild forward Ryan Hartman has been suspended for 10 games without pay for roughing Ottawa Senators forward Tim Stützle during NHL game number 828 in Ottawa on Saturday, February 1st. The National League's Department of Player Safety announced today. Incident occurred at 1944 in the second period, and Hartman has assessed a match penalty. Hartman is considered a repeat offender under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, and based on his average annual salary, will forfeit $487,804.90. The money goes to the Players' Emergency Assistance Fund. So, two things. One, 10-game ban for a 10-game suspension, 10-game ban without pay for a roughing call. And secondly, a total that is very transparent. They tell us what the total is for that ban in terms of what the fine will be. John, have you seen the video first off, what do you think of a 10-game ban for this roughing call?
Marty, before I get to that, we have a goal in the Challenge Cup. The Cardiff Devils against the Sheffield Steelers. It is the Sheffield Steelers who have put up another goal. I don't have the goal scorer just yet, but I know it's a power play goal. That makes that game 4-2 in the third period. If I get another goal in that game, I'll bring you the goal scorer for that fourth goal for Sheffield. But in the meantime, let's get back to Ryan Hartman. Yeah, start off with the actual play itself. I absolutely understand why the NHL DOPS has gone the way that they have. Hartman doesn't just put Stutzley down, he hooks his arm over the top of his head and he drives it down with his elbow. Like, he is completely defenseless, he's going face first into the ice. It's an incredibly dangerous play. It needs something. 10 games, maybe excessive? Like, I don't know. They're clearly saying that there was intent to injure on the play for 10 games and for 10 games to be without pay as well. I mean, I know that we always say that NHL is... Actually, sorry, we don't say. Everyone says, and it's well known, that NHL is the lowest paid professional sporting league of this level. Like, these guys are paid pennies compared to the likes of NBA, even baseball, NFL, all that. Those guys are way above what NHL players are earning because of the salary cap and the collective bargaining agreement and all the rest of it. But for 10 games, for him to lose out on nearly $500,000 is absolutely nuts. Like, imagine being paid 50 grand for a couple hours work. Like, that's effectively what we're saying here.
Uh-huh. Yep, nice work if you can get it, I guess.
It's just insane. But yeah, you absolutely made the point that I would have made if you hadn't already made it. It's the transparency. This is where the Elite League needs to learn, and the NHL does it because fans want to know. We want to know what the fine is, because that helps us to gauge the level of severity on which you're placing something. If he'd just been given a 10-game ban, this podcast and any other podcast and any other fan forum and all the rest, we could all be talking about why they've done it that way. But see that fine? That lets us look at what the level of severity the NHL Department of Player Safety has put on this particular incident. So they've said that because Hartman's considered a repeat offender under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement and based on his annual salary, he'll forfeit that because he is being unpaid under the CBA for 10 games, sorry. So why don't we have that in the Elite League? We have case books, we have rule books. Why don't we have some sort of level of transparency? Let's look at the Voris ban. He got 1 game, but we just got told he got fined. Well, how much was it? Was he not paid for that game? Now, I accept that we're at a completely different level. Do we necessarily need to be giving details on what every player is earning? Probably not. There are certain teams that you could go on and find all of their financial records because they are either registered company. Well, they're all registered companies, but some of them are charities. They're run by charities, so therefore their books are completely open. You could go and look at all the available public information if you wanted on what gets spent. But do we necessarily want to put out what the salaries are? Probably not. Would agents and players want that information being out there? Again, probably not. These guys are at the top end. When they sign their contracts, it's detailed out. We know exactly what they're worth and what they're being paid. So I get it, but we need some sort of level of transparency not on this level, but something that gives us an idea of what the level of severity is when it comes to these fines. Because right now, like I've said, it could be anything from a penny to a pound. Like, that might be the sliding scale. We just don't know.
I would say, just before we move on from this, I would say to John, like, I would probably agree with you. I don't think that it's necessarily that we need to know or we want to know what a player's wage is within the Elite League. It doesn't really bother me. I don't really care. I think what I'm more interested in is kind of like, what do they deem as, like, say for example, like the calls this week, so like the instigator one, how much is an instigator fine worth? And then secondly, where is that money, again, where's that money going? Like, the NHL have made it very
Yep.
clear that the money that is taken from this goes to the player fund and whatever it is, and that's completely clear and transparent. Where does the where does the Elite League one go? Where does it go? Like, if you're fining, how much is that fine? How much is a specific how much is a specific penalty worth? Like, if you've taken a certain kind of penalty, how much does that actually equate to in terms of a fine? Are they all the same? So, like, no matter if you got done for sleeve footing this week and were, you know, got a DOPS decision that because of sleeve footing you got a fine for that or whatever it is it the same fine for every single person for the same thing, or is it based on the severity of it? Like, a bit of transparency around that, and also then where that money goes. But we're never going to get that, and we keep talking about it, but we'll never get it. Anyway, we
Do
could
you
go
know what?
into it.
Let's start vicious rumors until they come out and tell us what it is. Let's just start vicious rumors. So I'm saying right now that the fines that the Elite League put out on players for bans or for things that they don't deem bans but they issue fines goes to the collective piss up in a well-known restaurant in Nottingham whenever all those guys get together for playoffs.
Yeah, it goes to yes, the Chicken Wing Fund.
Prove me wrong, Elite League. Prove me wrong.
We could talk about this for hours on end, but we don't have that time. Instead, what I'm going to do, John, is I'm going to move us on and actually get us pushed on to our period 3 of hockey.
Period 3 is our general Knocky News.
Knocky News.
Knocky News is for anything and everything else in the world of hockey that doesn't fit neatly into Period 1 or Period 2, or generally speaking, the other two periods are too full, so we throw it in Period 3, or it's to do with jerseys. And it just so happens that both stories this time around in Period 3 are all about jerseys. Marty, let's start with Cardiff. So, Cardiff Devils had their annual Pride Night the week after the Elite League Pride weekend, and several weekends after Sheffield and a couple other teams decided to have their Pride weekend before Elite League Pride weekend, whatever. It all seemed to be a bit of a mess this year. But they had their Pride weekend, and like most teams, they did their whole team shirt off the back. Unfortunately, it didn't quite go the way that they had planned. And later on in that evening, after everyone had gone home, some people with jerseys and some people without, they put out a little statement. So I'm going to just read the Cardiff Devils statement, if that's okay. The winning numbers posted on screen originally were the numbers from the last time we did a full team shirt off his back during the 2023-24 season. The new numbers were put into the same format, but we incorrectly posted the old graphic on the screen instead of the new one. We noticed the error as the game finished and the correct numbers were then posted, but some fans had already left. We can't go back in time and fix it, and we can't redraw the tickets because tickets will have been thrown away. All we can do is put our hands up and apologise for messing up. We've looked at every option on how to make the best of this mistake. We know that many people spent a lot of money trying to win a jersey in this raffle, and we can't refund everyone's money because the majority was in cash. We also can't keep the money from this raffle, so we will be donating the full amount of money from the raffle to Pride Cymru. I have no idea if I pronounced that right. I'm really sorry, anyone who's Welsh and listened to that. Of the 21 jerseys in the raffle, we have 8 unclaimed jerseys. All the winning numbers are below. If you still have a winning ticket, please get in touch with us. Marty, that's a bit of a cock up.
First off, I suppose, at least they're being open and honest about it. Nobody knew that it was wrong numbers from a different season. Therefore, they could have just continued on and just not said anything, which is kind of dishonest. But at least they were open and honest and said, look, we put our hands up. We made a mistake. This is what happened. But it looks bad. Like, it's so... And also...
Marty, I'm sorry, but we have yet another goal for the Sheffield Steelers in their Challenge Cup semi-final against the Cardiff Devils. This time, a power play goal from number 13, Daniel Levens, assisted by number 14, Patrick Watling, and number 58, Dominic Cormier. The fourth goal, as I mentioned earlier, was scored by number 14, Patrick Watling. That makes the game 5-2 to the Sheffield Steelers with 46-36 gone in the game.
As I was saying, the fact that they held their hands up and said, "Yep, we did wrong. Fair play to them." But it's a mess. If you think about it, like when they say here that they've got 21 jerseys from the raffle, 8 were unclaimed. I mean, the winning numbers. Nobody. If you're anybody else, if you're just a normal run of the mill person who's bought a ticket for Sheriff back, if you're like me, as soon as you read the numbers and you see that your number's not there, you either scrumple it up, throw it on the ground. We don't litter, obviously. You take it to the bin, or if you're like some of the other people who around us.
Come on, you know you love this feature of the podcast on game nights. Marty, we have another goal in the Scottish tie, the Glasgow Clan versus the Fife Flyers. It's another goal from the Fife Flyers. Is the comeback on right now? This time we have a goal from the Fife Flyers. That makes it 4-9. We'll wait to see who the goal scorer was, but I thought it was important to just bring you that straight away. 4-9, Fife Flyers, Glasgow Clan.
Thank you, John. Yes, so as I was saying, if you're like anybody normal, as soon as you see the number, your number hasn't shown up, you just kind of chuck your ticket. So the chances that someone here has one of these numbers for the 8 unclaimed jerseys is very, very slim. But yeah, this is a pretty big boo-boo, to be honest.
It is, yeah. Just give you a quick update on that goal scored by the Fife Flyers. It was scored at 58 minutes on the game clock, and it was scored by Felix Martineau. So the Fife Flyers have 2 minutes of gameplay to try and score 5 goals to bring them back level. Can they do it?
No.
Yeah, the whole Cardiff things, yeah, it's not great. I mean, I think in amongst a season where special jerseys and all the rest are a big part of what our league is about, Pride always tends to be one of the biggest ones. It's probably the one that the majority of fans get behind. I know there are people who jump on forums and jump on comments and all the rest of it and like leave your own baggage at the door. I would probably be shocked if shirt off the back sales are bigger for any one-off event across the Elite League than Pride. So there's a lot of money at play. There's a lot of people hoping to get those jerseys. I absolutely love my Belfast Giants Pride jersey. It's one of my favorites in my collection. And yeah, it's a big boo-boo to have made through an event like that. So yeah, like you say, fair play to them for owning up to it. Like you said, they probably could have gotten away with it, especially given there were a number of jerseys that were actually claimed. So clearly, I don't know what system they use in Cardiff. I don't know if they use raffle books. I don't know if they use printers like we have in Belfast, where certain numbers are reused. I just don't know.
Well, this is what I was going to say. It's interesting to note and to see that actually the numbers must get reused in some way, because obviously the fact that people did walk away with jerseys, but they were old numbers, but they were new tickets, would indicate that obviously the numbers have been played before, and therefore the numbers just repeat themselves over a certain time. But I guess that has to happen at some stage.
Well, that happens
So,
in
yeah.
Belfast. We know it happens in Belfast because there's like a scale that the numbers come out at within the ticketing system. So I would be shocked because I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, the shirt off the back ticketing system that we have was brought in while Todd was in Belfast, and it moved away from the old tear off books.
Yes,
So
I think it was.
would it be shocking to suggest that Todd just enacted the same system in
Yeah,
Cardiff,
probably.
knowing
Yep.
that he had to pay for the system. You don't have all you need is a roll of printer paper for each machine, and you fire away. You've got an ability to take cash. You've got an ability to potentially, I'm sure they take card the same way that the Giants do for it, and all the rest of it. So yeah, I'm sure that there's just a range of numbers that go in, and we're told it's random that the numbers are picked. But like you say, it is interesting that clearly previous winning numbers in a random number generator, so many of them won again.
No,
So
but they
only 8
didn't.
jerseys out of that whole team, but they did. Only 8 jerseys out of that whole team went unclaimed. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. So they
Yep.
put up
Okay.
numbers from a session last year, and a lot of those came up again.
Okay. Yeah, they were bought. Yeah. Okay. No, I get it.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
But again, am I just being a bit cynical?
Yeah. I get it. But yeah, a mess, and yeah, nothing they can do about it. I guess this moving on for that. It's yep.
Sorry, I completely forgot that it's me that's in charge here. Murray, last thing for us to talk about. I know a lot of people will be probably hoping that we're going to have a look at some Valentine's jerseys. We're not. We looked at that Glasgow one a couple of weeks ago, and it's just put us right off everything. So we haven't prepped the Valentine's jerseys at all. Because being on, yeah, like I say, that vomit-inducing one from Glasgow was just enough for everyone. We probably will look back. A few teams haven't released theirs yet. A few have. So probably next podcast we'll throw them up, or generally speaking, when I'm less busy and I can put them up on the slides. But what we do have to look at is the NHL Four Nations Face-Off competition. I've been trying to remember what that's called all week, knowing that we were going to talk about these. So, Marty, we have the Four Nations to talk about. Let's start off with the USA and Team Canada. What do you make of these jerseys?
I mean, hard. You don't. They're not really. They're not really making big, massive wholesale changes to these jerseys. To be fair, USA jersey just looks like the
I
normal
don't
USA
know. The
jersey.
Canada one.
The Canada one does look
weird
different.
About the Canada
The
one, it doesn't look
the
like a Canada jersey.
the Maple Leafs flag looks very different. I think they've went opposite. They've obviously went with a full colored Maple Leafs in the middle for their logo rather than a standard classic white Canada Maple Leaf with the just a simple red jersey. I'm looking at my one that's sitting up there hanging up there.
Marty, we have another goal in the Challenge Cup game between the Sheffield Steelers and the Cardiff Devils. It's another goal for the Sheffield Steelers, this time scored at 50 minutes and 3 seconds on the game clock, scored unassisted by number 96 Cole Sanford. It makes that game 5-3, and it looks like the first tie is getting away from Cardiff. And it looks like the host of the podcast has gotten away from me. He's decided to dander off. Oh no, he's gone back to his jersey collection. And he's going to show us off a Canada jersey. Marty, you had me panicked. I was reading the goal announcement there, which you clearly love so much that you were able to walk away from it. Yeah, Mark's on and says the Canada one is great. I prefer that. Like I have that as well. But I guess they are trying to do something different, given that it's not the Canada like international team. It's specific to this Four Nations face-off competition. Yeah, like, do you have a take on this redoing of that jersey?
I mean, I like the Canada one. I think the Canada one looks pretty good. I do like that the Maple Leaf stands out pretty well with the white stripe in front of the white stripes. I like it. It's probably my preferred one of those two jerseys. The USA one just looks like a normal standard USA jersey. To be fair, red, white, and blue. It doesn't really change much. And it's got the USA yes, it doesn't really have a branded logo unless they put a big massive eagle or something on it. But yeah, I definitely think the Canada one does look the best out of those two anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, it's 4 nations, so that means we have two more to look at as well. So we have the Finland and the Sweden jersey to look at as well. Marty, these definitely more remind me of their like Olympics, their World Championship sweaters. Like they're tied much closer to that branding, because I think that's what the North American viewing population are more used to seeing. I really, really do like that Finland jersey though.
Yeah, no, I always like the Finland jersey. I think the Finland jersey always looks like a really really nice jersey. Um, I mean, yeah, again, as you said, they're pretty quite close to their standard usual Olympic type ones. I think the Canada one's probably one of the only ones there out of those four that look significantly different from those ones, I guess. Um, yeah, I still stand by. I think the Canada one is probably my preferred out of the four.
Yeah, I think you're 100%. I think you're nailed in. I think that's the best. That's the best for me out of the all four, to be totally honest. Marty, that is the last of the jerseys for us to look at. It's quite a
Oh,
quiet third period here in this podcast. Marty can bring you news that the game in Glasgow has finished. It has finished 9-4 to the Glasgow Clan. The Fife Flyers couldn't quite pull off the comeback in the end. Meanwhile, in Sheffield, I believe there's only a couple of minutes left to go. It's currently sitting at 5-3. I don't think we're going to see the end of that game here on this podcast. You'll probably be quite happy to hear. I promise not to interrupt the outro video if someone scores to bring us back, just to tell you that there's been another goal. But it's looking very, very likely that the Sheffield Steelers are going to take at least a 1 or 2 goal advantage going back to Cardiff Bay.
yep. And with that, then, if that was the last of our stories for period three, then that's the last of our stories for this episode. And with that, then, it's just a matter of us signing off the podcast as we always do. Why don't you get involved? Talk to us, send us a message, reach out to us. We're on all the social media channels. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, Blue Sky. Isn't that what it's called? Yeah. I think we're also on, what's the one called? The Facebook one? Threads.
Threads.
Yeah. Most of them are door 14 hockey, apart from obviously Blue Sky, which is like something random.
Can I get someone to tell us what our username is on all of them? If everyone listens up really closely here, someone's going to tell you.
Door 14 hockey.
Oh, cute. Door 14 hockey, as Isla tells us, on all our social media channels. John, I do this every week, but you continue to put on some really funny videos on Insta, on TikTok, and also now Insta for solely for Aaron's benefit, so you can see them.
Yeah, I'm putting them on Instagram because Aaron clearly is not a TikToker. He's showing his age. You guys are clearly in your 40th year, and Aaron has decided not to stick with the kids. Us young 38-year-olds, we're still down with it.
Or the argument could be that given the job that Aaron does, he kind of maybe knows something more about the security of TikTok than we do. That could be the other reason. So yeah, Door 14 Hockey on all of our social media channels. Check out this podcast and other podcasts on our website, door14hockey.com. If you haven't already, don't forget you can go and watch this podcast on video versions on our YouTube channel, Door 14 Hockey. Go along there, subscribe, like, and hit the little bell button thing that's down in the corner somewhere here, and you'll be notified of upcoming episodes and videos. And if you're on your podcast provider of choice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and also leave us a rating or whatever review style there is on your podcast provider platform. It really does help us just kind of get seen, and also kind of promotes the show. So thank you very much for those who have already done that. With that is us for this week, and all it leaves us to do is to sign off for this episode. I'm Marty.
I'm John.
Have a great week.